Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a great day. You're listening to or watching us live on Facebook, the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. Today's episode is a great one, timely, very timely, in fact. So we have Courtney DeRonde with TDT CPAs and Advisors.
Too many letters there, Tersh.
Such a tongue twister here.
You got it.
So we're going to talk about the three things that we should be focusing on during an uncertain economy. And I'm super excited about this because, it's an uncertain economy. And between whether it's going to be the pandemic or an election and the uncertainty that surrounds all of that, it's super exciting to talk about this with you today, Courtney. And we're in the process. So my brain's going a million miles an hour because we're in the process of creating our budget for next year. And so we're reflecting on our budgets from last year or this 2020. And we're seeing where we had set targets and goals in certain areas, and we blew some targets out of the water, and then other areas we just completely flopped in because we weren't tracking those with KPIs. And so I'm curious to see what these three things are that we should be focusing on, because I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm probably not focusing on at least two of them, maybe all three. Welcome to the show, Courtney.
Thank you, Tersh. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, like you said, I mean, there's just been so much going on in 2020. That is like the understatement of the world, right? And I think if you think about having economic uncertainty or a global health pandemic or a complete shift in the way people, consumers, live and make decisions, any one of those things at a time would be disruptive.
Right.
Having them all at the same time is a lot. So you really have an opportunity to throw a lot of conventional wisdom, like last year's budget, out the window and say, like, what could we do now? What does this make possible? And so there's, I think, a ton of opportunity that comes through all of this disruption if you're willing to step out and take some chances. But it also can be overwhelming, and you don't know quite where to start or what to do. It's almost like there's two extremes. Some people want to sit tight and do nothing, like just be like,
sit
you know
on your
what?
hands and
Yeah, let's just kind of see what happens and then I'll make some decisions. Um, if you do that, you are not going to be sitting tight. You're going to be like miles behind everybody else.
yeah.
So you're not going to be marking time. You're not going to be standing still. Things are going to sweep past you because everything is changing, and so you have to really be willing to take some action and do some things. And you might make mistakes, you might be wrong, so you might have to course correct. But if you think you can just sit tight and wait for certainty, you're going to be moving backwards, not standing still.
Yeah, so you can't stick your head in the sand. There's an old ostrich over here.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about you and your organization, and so that we get a little bit of understanding as to why you are an expert in this
Yes.
this topic.
So I'm a CPA and the managing partner at TDT CPAs and Advisors. So we are a boutique advisory and accounting firm. We are located in Iowa. We serve clients all across the country. So we fortunately were set up already to serve digitally. So that was a
Yeah.
blessing for us to be able to continue serving, whether somebody is down the street in a local community where we have an office or across the country. We've been able to adapt, and increase that level of digital and virtual engagement. But we serve small businesses and nonprofit organizations. Primarily, our sweet spot is those who are in kind of the growth and maturity stage of business, so either growth or maturity, where
Mhm.
you're really focused on getting to the next level. And so we help those leaders who often find themselves in a position of being overwhelmed. We help them to figure out how to use their financial information to support decision making to help them get where they're trying to go. Because a lot of times finance can be a very confusing and overwhelming thing, and a lot of business owners kind of want to say, you know what, that's not my
Yeah.
thing, and they want
Right.
to ignore it. So we help them to see the power of how this information can be a tool
Mhm.
in growing your organization.
Yeah, I like that because it's so true whenever you start talking financials. It's almost like you're analysis paralysis. So it's like you get so much information that it's like, mm, I just trust that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I don't even want to know the numbers.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of accountants are very technical people. I mean, we have some education and experience in some very technical and complicated
Mhm.
things. And and same thing goes for, engineers and architects and attorneys. And anytime you have somebody who's in a very technical profession, it can be challenging to find people in that profession who can make that translation over to their customer or their client to
Right.
help them understand on their level that's needed what they need to know. And so that's a big differentiator for our firm, is that we are very focused on being proactive and practical. It doesn't do us any good to have all this technical knowledge if we can't find a way to make it helpful and useful. For me personally, as the managing partner in our firm and an owner, I have firsthand experience of running and scaling our own business. So I
Mm.
get it even on a higher, more intense level.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll even find myself, I joked with my team earlier this week. I said something that kind of alluded to the fact of, why doesn't our changing cash match up with our change in profitability? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I am a CPA. I know why it doesn't.
Right.
But when you get into that owner's mindset, those are the kinds of things that it's like we have to be able to understand at a high level. And your CPA should be an advisor to you and should be someone who can speak in a way and explain things in a way that's actually helpful and doesn't make you feel um, like, oh, never mind, I trust that's right. Like, I can't
Right.
ever understand that. You
Right,
can
yeah.
understand on a level that will make this information be helpful and valuable to your business, just like you could with someone in IT or marketing or HR. You don't need all the technical knowledge. You don't need to be able to do it all yourself, but
Mhm.
you need to have a service provider who is willing to interact with you in a way that can be helpful, not just technical.
Oh, yeah, and so, like, are you familiar with Donald Miller? He
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, one of my
so
favorites.
yeah, right, so it's been years ago now since, I heard him say this, and he still does, but, uh, it was like a aha moment for me whenever he said, "On a spectrum of 1 to 10, you're an expert and you're a 10 level 10, so, like, you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about." And so whenever you are trying to explain things, sometimes most of us will come down to like 11 level 7 ish or something like that. And um but a level 7 is still way over people's head. You need to come way down to like a level 2 and just really break things down and explain things to people, not talk to them like they're dumb or anything like that. Just like, maybe I don't know what cost of goods sold me or COGS. So somebody says, "Hey, what's your COGS?" And you're like, I don't know. Like above the line, below the line, like I don't know. Like you're talking French to me. I have no idea. Like you want me to fix the air conditioner? Yeah, I can do that. Uh, but it's crazy how much we take for granted. So in our industry, in the service industries, whenever we go into someone's home and we start talking about things, another reference from Donald Miller is that fight or flight thought in your brain. When you start talking over somebody's head, they just agree or just make you go away, say whatever it's going to take to make you go away. Whenever all we have to do is just come to and explain it a little simpler, and you know it's cool that you have a lot of knowledge, and that is great and you need that, but you don't have to teach everybody everything every time you have a conversation with them, and that's where it kind of gets overwhelming sometimes whenever we're trying to relay a message to our clients, and how we've been as a business owner, how I've had interactions with a CPA and then or an accountant, and then it just come. I'm like, like I know numbers, and you're confusing the heck out of me. So, it's, I like the fact that y'all really are you work towards being like a an outside controller or an outside CPA. Um, do y'all also do bookkeeping, or do you just keep it to like your CFO?
Yeah, we do. So because our focus is on small business owners, most of our clients just aren't of the size where it would make sense for them financially to
Mhm.
have a bookkeeper and a controller and a CFO. But every business needs somebody at least a fraction of the time to perform those roles. They're very different roles that require different skills and abilities, and they provide different value. And so we provide outsourced accounting on any of those three levels. So for some clients, it's the accounting and bookkeeping, it's transaction processing, paying bills, processing payroll.
Mhm.
Basically, that foundational someone, either you or us, has to keep things accurate, timely, and relevant. Because if we don't have that, none of this other oversight or forward-looking guidance that a controller or CFO would provide will be helpful if it's based on old or bad
Right.
information.
Yeah. If it's 2 or 3 months old, like things change really fast. Expect like with us in air conditioning, if you are looking at June's records or July's records, and it's October by the time you actually get everything done, like there's a big difference in demand and revenue and all kinds of other stuff between those. I mean, there's a massive difference between the two. So you could really be shooting yourself in the foot for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, what we just found is a lot of clients will have someone internally who can do some aspect of
Hmm.
one of those three roles. And so we usually augment that. So we work together with that person to say, okay, if this person can really handle the bookkeeping and the transaction processing and keep things up to date and accurate, then that allows us to provide controller and CFO services. So we're providing oversight to have good control, make sure things are accurate, and we're providing the more forward thinking, big picture guidance about where we're going now that we have confidence that we've accurately accounted for where we've been. But in some cases it's the other way around. They have a high level CFO type person, or maybe they're another outsourced CFO, and what's lacking is someone to keep everything recorded. And so we provide any or all of those outsourced accounting services to our clients. And then we also provide tax planning and tax preparation services and some other consulting based project work and data visualization reporting. And so the forecasting and scenario planning, there's lots of things we provide. But the very core of our service is a lot of those things that I just mentioned rely on having that accurate, relevant financial information. And so if that can't be handled by the client, our team is providing that service so that we can do the rest of what is really helpful.
Yeah, garbage in, garbage out. So
Absolutely. Yep.
now, whenever you have someone that does that, do you use first off, do you use QuickBooks Online?
We do.
Okay.
That is so we have a certain technology
Uh-huh.
stack. So we have a tech stack of certain tools that we utilize so that our team is very well versed in them. We can efficiently use them and help clients use them. QuickBooks Online is the accounting software that we use.
Cool. So do you use or uh, recommend a different company to do receipt capturing? Do you use like Receipt Bank or
Receipt Bank is the
okay.
receipt capture that we use, and
Okay,
then
cool.
Bill.com is the bill pay tool that we use. So
Sweet.
Receipt Bank, yeah, is the image capturing and
Hmm.
matching up with the transactions and storing it with the transaction in QBO. And then Bill.com is another tool that functions similarly in that you capture the image digitally, but it tells us we need to pay the bill for them and can have some approval processes in place. Those are the three main technology applications we use:
Awesome.
QBO, Receipt Bank, and Bill.com.
Sweet. So, I promise that we are going to get into the three topics, the three things that we got to discuss. But I have some personal questions that I'm trying to get answered. So, while I have Courtney here, I'm going to ask the questions. So, um, receipt bank. Do you ever have a situation where people are putting things into the wrong um, uh, classes or categories? So, like, I have service experts that they really only need to get into cost of goods sold, job materials, and fuel to put their fuel receipts in. And I'd like to be able to limit that to that's the only categories they could see or have access to.
Oh, yeah, per user so that they have a limited list of who they can select. That's a great question. I don't know that we've ever had anybody ask to limit on a per user basis
Mhm.
that list. I know one thing that we do is when we onboard a new client, we go through training with their team to help them understand what happens with this information and
Mhm.
why it's so important that you track this appropriately, code it appropriately, that you capture it timely, because this is what this information means to the
Yeah.
business. So that training is part of it. And then we also, for our clients, go through a process where we are reviewing what has been put in for
Gotcha.
proper coding to see if anything does look like it needs to be misclassified. But that's a great question. I'd have to ask
All right.
one of my other
Cool.
team members if you can limit that per user, because if not, that's a really great suggestion that we might be able to submit
Yeah,
to our
because
receipt bank contacts as well.
it the thing is I just don't want my guys getting fat thumbs and putting stuff in wrong categories. And I was like, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, that's a
cool.
great question. I'm gonna jot that down.
So let's go ahead and before we get started, there is a special offer that you've so graciously offered to the listeners. We'll disclose all of that information at the end once we've talked about these three items that we need to focus on. But I just want to make sure that anybody knows if they have to jump off this for any reason because uh, they're at a service call or whatever, they can make sure they tune back in to get that offer. But with that being said, let's get started with those three things. What's the first thing?
Okay, so the first thing is don't wait for perfection, focus on profitability. So you got to think of when there's uncertainty and everybody's changing their patterns and habits and their threshold for risk and value. You have to think about, what do your customers need? What do they need right now? And whatever it is that you know or provide that is relevant and helpful to them, focus on that
Mm.
and make sure that you're set up to do that in a profitable way. So Tersh, you mentioned your budget. You're working on your budget right now, and you're looking at last year's budget as a guide. Most likely, what you planned for 20 and what actually happened are two different things. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's the case in our business. And
Hmm.
I've been in the same boat as you this last week. I've been working on our budget for 21, looking back at our budget for 20, and I'm asking myself these same questions. What is most helpful to our clients right now? It might be different than what we had planned for
Mm.
20. So based on all the change that's going on right now, you have to really know your customer. What did they need? What are they valuing differently now than they valued last year? They're valuing um, some some certainty around safety of their family,
Right. Hmm.
maybe convenience, maybe they've had changes in their personal budgets, predictability, like that might be just something, just knowing, maybe they're willing to spend the same amount that they've ever spent with you before, but they want to know what it's going to be upfront and have it paid steadily over the course of a year. Maybe that's all you have to do is arrange packages or payment plans
Yeah.
differently. Like, think about your customer and what do they need, and what is it that you provide that matches up with that need, and keep in mind that these needs are probably different than what they were in the past. And as you
So
think through that. Oh, go ahead.
would you ask them, like, would you try and do some sort of survey, or because some if I guess what I would think they need, I'm probably going to be wrong. Um, so I'm wondering how I would find that information out.
Yeah, so you could ask them, you could do some surveying, you could also do some testing. So this is why I say don't wait for perfection,
Mm.
because if you wait for perfection, you're going to miss the boat. You're going to spend like 6 months surveying customers, and then you'll be ready to roll. And by that time, 6 months in this environment
Right.
might be like another 7 years, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
so So that's why I say don't wait for perfection. You have to be willing to test some things out. So if you're a pretty established business, if you're in a maturity stage or even in a growth stage, you might have to put your startup hat back on a little bit. Remember when you started your business and you didn't really know exactly what your customers wanted or what they were willing to pay, and you had to do a lot more testing and trying things out. This is the perfect time to do those things. There's a lot of grace, I think, in the marketplace right now
Yeah.
because people know, consumers know, business owners are trying to adapt to different ways of serving to meet the changes in our environment. So there's a lot of grace on like this might be not be perfect, but I know I can see you're trying to meet my needs.
Mhm.
So balance that. Like, how do I gather information? You might be talking even just to like your closest friends and family members, but test some things out. So you don't have to go all in, like, okay, you know what? We're not doing that anymore. We're doing all this going forward. Do some testing and see. So, like, as a new customer comes in, try this out and see how they respond to it. And if that works, try it some more. So that's the biggest thing is like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to be willing to try something and adapt. And
You know,
if you
that's great advice for people, especially startups too. Like if you like you're used to doing something the way that you've always done it where you worked previously, and it's not working for you now. Like just try something new, and each client. The thing about our business is the only thing that's consistent is change. And so if something's working, then we're gonna morph that direction, and it might not work in 6 months, and we might be morphing back to the other direction. So, yeah, I love that what you're talking about there.
Yeah, so you can definitely do surveys. I don't want to discourage you from doing surveys. I wouldn't have it be a process that takes like too long. You can
Mm.
also pay for some data and some information, but it might be just getting kind of a core group of some of your customers or friends or referral sources and saying like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking and I would just love your perspective." Because sometimes as business owners, we're so into it that we can feel like we're out of touch with what our
Oh
customers
yeah.
want.
Hmm.
And so, just taking that time to find that mix of what it is that you know and can provide and how it matches with what they want. But this is the other caveat: you need to be able to do it in a profitable way.
Right.
And so,
That's the big thing. You got to
yes,
make sure you make money.
which requires that you know what your costs are and what your margins are. And so, if you know this is what it costs me to do this, and this is what I'm going to get paid for it, the difference is my margin. You got to make sure you're fully loading all those costs. So it's not just the cost of sending my service tech out to do a particular job and their salary and benefits. What else did you have to do? Did you have to
Yep.
have advertising? Do you have to have pay somebody else in the office to dispatch them, somebody to invoice? You have to, really understand how much money do I make doing this? Because if you're going to put in all this effort and all this work, it's got to be profitable at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So matching up where you can best help with how you can do it in a profitable way. And then the more you understand about how much money you make or where you make your money, the more you can focus your efforts on those things that meet that mix of this is helpful and relevant and profitable. The
Mm.
things that are not as profitable, you can take your resources away from. I'm not going to worry about trying to get more of that business because it's not profitable. The things that are really helpful and relevant and not as profitable, you got to find a way to make it more profitable.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing is whenever I've created all these packages and I've bundled all these awesome deals together, and then it sucks. And then I'm like, oh, these are my babies, and we're going to go with these. And then you're like, nope, they either don't make you any money or nobody wants it. I'm like,
Yeah, right.
great.
And well, that's what's hard when we get kind of invested in something personally.
Yeah.
Like, well, we spent all this time on this. That's where knowing your customers is so valuable and what they need and what they want, and recognizing that right now, especially in this uncertain economy, and with the global health pandemic and everything that's happened, that's going to be different than it was before. We also in our business, I just had a call like this morning. We're asking our team who directly serve clients, what are you hearing from clients that are new issues and challenges that we maybe haven't talked about?
Mm.
That's a standard question, and they're submitting things that somebody asked about this, somebody asked about that. Like for example, right now we have more clients who we don't provide outsourced accounting for asking about converting to QuickBooks Online because they want to be able to do what they need to do without having to go into their office. Like they've been limping by for months thinking that they'll find a way to this will be over and then go back to the office. And now
Mhm.
they're like, you know what, never mind. I'd like to have access to it anywhere, whether it's because I'm at home or because I'm on vacation next year.
Mhm.
And so, that was something that came up where we haven't had a lot of that in the past. So asking your people, your employees, your team members who serve directly with clients to feed you those ideas is another way to have more insight into what your customers need. And then you've
Yeah.
got to figure out how do we do this profitably.
Right, profitably. That's the key.
Hmm.
So one of the things that we did with Service Emperor is from day one we were cloud based and paperless, and so when the pandemic hit and we're 100% remote, also it was like, okay, how are you doing this? Because you're making this work, and now everybody here is having to resort to doing the same thing that you're doing. And for us, it we didn't have huge hiccups because we were already on QuickBooks Online. Our CRM was is already cloud based. All of our communication is all cloud based, and so it was very much like that part of our business didn't really skip a beat. We just had to make sure that we sanitized everything at that point. So that was thankful. I mean, we didn't plan for this, but it's just I'm glad that we were prepared for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of being kind of ahead of the curve on that. But I mentioned earlier, that's kind of the position we're in too. So what it's allowed us to do is not have to spend the last 8 months trying to figure
Hmm.
out how do we get everybody virtual. It's like we already got that covered. Now it's like a next level, so we're leaps and bounds above other people. So you've got competitors
Hmm.
who've been struggling to try to figure out some of the things that you are already doing. Gives you a leg up. You've got more opportunity because you've already got that figured out. You're not blocking and tackling. You're like, what else can we do? What
Right.
does this make possible for
Absolutely.
us?
Absolutely. Cool. So how about number two?
Number two, so don't just look at where you are or where you've been, focus on where you are headed. So there's a couple different ways that you can think about this. The first one I would say is cash flow. So if you're looking at your cash balance as your measure of how you're doing, that only tells you where you're at today and what's already happened. You have to get visibility around where you are headed. And so that requires projecting your cash flow. And so much of accounting is reporting what's already happened in the
Oh yeah.
past. And so you have to have an additional step in here where you are looking forward and guessing, like you're estimating. You don't know. It's not like we talked a lot about accurate, relevant financial information. This is not going to be highly accurate because you're guessing, but at least you're getting some visibility around it. And there are some steps in this process to projecting your cash flow that can be, pretty accurate. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about here is, you're starting with your cash on hand available to you today, and then you're estimating on a, I would say, depending on how volatile you are right now, your business is right now, on a perhaps a weekly basis.
Really.
In normal times you can definitely do this on a monthly basis, but if you're experiencing a lot of volatility, um, you should convert to doing this weekly, at least for a period of time until things stabilize. So again, you're looking at, okay, here's how much cash I have today, and then what are my anticipated inflows, cash coming in the door for me each week for the next, say, 12 weeks, week by week.
Mm.
And this is based on, like, what do I have in the pipeline? What have I had in the past? What do I think is going to be different? And again, you have to estimate, which is, I know it's not comfortable or fun, but you have to make some estimates. So if you're somebody, if your business has accounts receivable, so you bill clients and collect later,
Mhm.
you should be able to look at your accounts receivable and see when were they billed, when do I think they're going to actually pay me.
When do I hope they're going to pay me?
Yes, when do I hope they're going to pay me? And if you have any kind of point of sale items,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to, predict like how much am I going to sell, per week for these items. So that's the receipt side of it. On the disbursement side, you're looking at a couple easy ones is when are my payroll dates? Like, what do I estimate my payroll will be in which weeks?
Hmm.
And my payroll taxes, when are those due? If you collect sales tax and remit it, when is that going to be remitted? Um, and then credit card, if so, a lot of our clients, we encourage them to use business credit cards to manage cash flow and to earn rewards,
Hmm.
but pay off the bill. Like, don't incur a bunch of credit card debt.
Right, right,
So, as
yeah,
many of your expenses you can put on the credit card, then the credit card bill is paid this week, and then this week, and then this week, and you can easily estimate it. Whereas if you've got people out there charging on a debit card, or you're paying accounts payable checks,
true.
it's a lot more sporadic. If you're doing a lot of our clients will do specific check runs, like they pay bills on the 10th and the 25th. So in the weeks of the 10th and the 25th, you're going to put in, what are you estimating to go out? So that's going to take, here's what I have, here's what I think's coming in, here's what I think's going out. This is my projected cash balance. And you're going to do that for like the next 12 weeks out
Hmm.
and look out and see where am I projected to have a low or negative cash balance. And then this is where the work begins. What can I do now that I know that there's going to be a problem? What do I need to change now to avoid a problem over the next 12 weeks?
Oh, that's perfect. So, well, how do you determine if you're quote unquote volatile or non?
Yeah, so I would say this is based on so something that's going to really impact your cash flow. Does your customer base going experiencing some things that might make them slower to pay?
Mm.
Do you think the demand for your services is going to go down? Like if
So
all
if it's
this
seasonal, like if like we have a dead time that during the winter because it's not really cold or not really hot, that type of stuff.
Yep, seasonality would definitely impact it, but also I would just say right now if you look at okay in your local community, let's just say this for example, if you're a service-based business and in your local community, if a lot of your customer base works for a certain industry or employer, and
Oh
that
yeah.
employer just laid off a boatload of people,
Mm.
and you think
Yep.
they might have to cut back on regular service agreements, or they might have to hold off on having, their ductwork cleaned, or, something like that. Be aware of what's going on in your customer based environment that might affect their ability to pay you for
Gotcha.
services you've already performed, or the demand for your services changing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's what I
So
mean by
yeah. So we
volatility.
have so Gulfstream Aerospace is a big employer here locally, and I'd say probably every 10 years or so they go through a massive layoff. And it seems like that's whenever we hear, oh, so and so got laid off. Like a lot of people that got laid off because it's such a large employer here. Um, and so I could definitely see like especially if they went through a massive layoff right now with all of the other stuff going on, um, that could definitely hurt some demand calls for sure.
Yeah, and that's on the negative side. I'd say the other thing to think about on the positive side
Mhm.
is when there are opportunities for a lot of growth and it happens rapidly, that can create a cash flow problem as well because
Oh
sometimes you
yeah.
have to invest.
Yep.
You might have to hire employees before you are able to deploy them.
Yep.
You might have to develop some products or service offerings or invest in some equipment in order to be able to reach the demand. And so there could be a timing difference. So even
Good
though
point.
there's exciting good things, if you're going to incur some costs before you can actually reap the rewards of it, that is another aspect where you'd be a little bit more volatile, a little bit different than usual, that you'd want to be a little more in tune with this.
Yeah, whenever we have someone new that starts on the team, usually they'll spend a week in the office not being productive, as a service tech. And then you have the cost of stocking a whole van, which could be upwards to 10 grand worth of stuff. And so you have his payroll, the van stocking of all the materials and tools and stuff. And, it may be a week or two before he starts making revenue to
hmm
to bring it back in. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so that's kind of the reasons behind doing that forecast, and like I said, once you get the forecast there,
Mhm.
you're looking at where do I see a problem, and then you've got to dig into what can I do. So can I delay some payments? Can I accelerate some receipts? Do I need to go to the bank about expanding my line of credit?
Mm,
Do I need to finance the purchase of this new equipment instead of using my cash reserves to pay for it? Um, it just, there could be a whole host of things. Cash flow problems are just a symptom of some other underlying issue.
gotcha.
And
Mhm.
so the cash flow projection is a way to bring visibility to the problem, and then you've got to dig down and figure out the underlying issues. Maybe the problem is you have a new person, a new employee who is sending out invoices and they're making mistakes, and people aren't paying your bills as fast as they were because there's so many mistakes in them. And so they're like, I'm not going to pay that until you fix this. So you went from collecting in 15 days to collecting in 45 because they're spending 30 days back and forth trying to fix the errors in
Mm.
the invoices. So there could be a whole host of things that are causing the problems, but until you have visibility that there is a problem, you don't even know where to look to solve it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. So, how about number 3?
All right. So the third one, don't miss this opportunity. Focus on things that you wanted or needed to change anyway. So when things are going well, it's really easy for costs to creep in, inefficient processes to become the status quo. We also, a lot of times, avoid dealing with the fact that we've got the wrong people on our team, we've got the wrong vendor relationship, we keep bringing in the wrong customers. When things are going well, those are the things that we kind of let happen because, like, things are going good and it's not really causing me a problem.
Mhm.
When there is disruption and uncertainty, it creates an opportunity for us to do some things that we wanted or needed to do anyway. Crisis accelerates change. So don't miss this opportunity. Figure out those things that you really wanted or needed to do. So scrutinize your recurring charges and subscriptions. Like as you go through your budget, do what I did on Monday. Get your general ledger detail report. Like it's the detail. It's
Mhm.
and just scan through it and be like, what is this? Or, oh my
Yep.
goodness, we pay that for that. Just, you don't have to spend a ton of time because there could be a bunch of little things that might not add up to a ton, but you might be surprised if you just look for recurring charges, subscriptions, things that have become status quo that you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize we were spending that on that.
Mhm.
Um, be strategic and intentional about your marketing. So a lot of times people kind of, I don't know why, but their instinct is to cut back on marketing. It's like, oh, that's an overhead cost
Right.
and I'm going to cut back on marketing, or I'm going to cut expenses across the board. The marketing budget gets cut just as much as everything else. As long as you're being strategic and intentional, your marketing should be driving your revenue.
Yeah, I mean, that should be as long as it's a percentage, like, don't focus on the dollar amount, as long as you keep it at the percentage that you have it targeted at. That's the biggest thing for me, like, and, whenever we were talking about ours, it was, um, I asked, "Well, what does our dollar amount need to be?" I was like, "Well, it doesn't matter if you're making more money, then good, keep spending money on marketing as
Yeah,
long as
if it
you're selling
works.
stuff." Yeah.
Exactly. If it works, keep doing it. So the key there is to be intentional and strategic about it. And then I just look for the leaks and the waste and anything that you've been wanting or needing to change. Take this opportunity to do
Mm.
it because there's so much disruption going on right now. This is the perfect time to to do those things that you've been wanting or needing to do.
Yeah, I like that, and it's so crazy because like during the summer when we're so busy and just wide open, it's easy for us to spend money to try and solve something, and basically we're trying to throw money at it, and then it becomes a recurring expense that really is not fixing anything. In the long run, we figured out a different way to make it happen, and you're still spending 300 or 400 bucks on it a month, and even a couple $100, $100 a month on something, and you don't even realize that it's like, wow, I didn't like that's $1,200 a year, that we're spending on something that we're not even using anymore. And
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just a great opportunity to make some of those changes.
cool. So thank you for all of this information because I have some really cool stuff to focus on, and like I said before we started, uh, yeah, I don't do any of that stuff. So yeah.
Well, I hope this is helpful to you and to your listeners.
Yeah, it totally is. So, you had mentioned before, what's the best place to reach you, to find out more about this?
Yes. So you can definitely go to tdtpc.com, and that's our website. You can find anything, any information about us. But for your listeners, we have some additional offers. We really believe at TDT that our communities and our economies depend on small businesses, and I think small business owners know that they need to do some of these things we talked about. Like, you've got to handle your cash flow. You've got to maximize your profitable services and products. You've got to cut expenses. Um, I think we know that. I mean, I
Mhm.
know that, and I'm a
Oh, yeah.
CPA leading an accounting firm. It still takes a lot of intentionality to actually get it done.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mhm.
so we created a video course that is available on demand that goes more in depth on each of these three topics that I talked about. And it also
Sweet.
includes a course book with like a downloadable cash flow projection tool and some other tools that you can use to actually take these concepts and apply them to your business. Listen to the video where I teach on these concepts in more depth, work through the related course book content, and start implementing these things in your business. So, for your podcast listeners, we're offering 50% off the video course.
Sweet.
Um, and as an added bonus, the first 25 listeners will also receive a free 1 hour consulting call with one of our CPAs to help you execute on the video course content. So you have an hour of one of our CPAs' time to say, okay, I went through the course book and I still don't get this piece, or what do you think about this or that? And so for the first 25 listeners, in addition to anybody getting the 50% off the course, the first 25 listeners will also get that 1 hour call. So for all of that, you go to tdtpc.com/SBM for Service Business Mastery. So SBM.
Perfect. And I will put all of that information into the show notes. So I appreciate that. Is there anything that I didn't ask?
I
Anything I
don't
left off
think so.
there?
I think we covered it. Yeah, like I said, we would just love for your listeners to take advantage of that offer and
Yeah.
use, I think we've got a couple weeks here before the end of the year.
Hmm.
A lot of times people are slower maybe between Christmas and New Year's. You could definitely
Knock it out.
take that course and work through it in a day and map out, like, these are the things I'm going to change and implement as you go through your planning for 2021. I think it'd really help you to focus on how you can be more effective and profitable, and relevant to your customers in 2021.
That'll be so awesome. And thank you so much for that offer too. That's really helpful.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Cool. So if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Courtney and her team, and don't hesitate. I mean, because it's going to be quick. The first 25 people are going to jump on that offer for sure. So don't hesitate to jump on that. It's tdtpc.com/SBM for Service Business Mastery. Thank you again, Courtney, for coming on the show, and thank you so much for all the information that you gave us, and a little to-do list for me to start working on some more.
Awesome. It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Tersh.
Absolutely. So if anybody has any questions, reach out to Courtney or her team. And then also my email is tersh@serviceemperor.com. If you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And with that being said, thank you again for watching or listening to another episode of the Service Business Mastery Podcast, a podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. Until we talk again next week, have a wonderful day. Be safe out there.